Family and fellow soldiers, I'm the Professor, and this is the Moment of Truth. And now, the Friday Crime Report. Recently, there was another shooting that took place at a Jewish facility, this time in Memphis. A man armed with a gun went to a Jewish school and tried to get in. When he found the doors locked, he was confronted by school security, and he then fired off a couple of rounds at the worker as he fled the scene. He was located by police 3 miles away from the school, and he was shot during a confrontation with them. Currently, he's allegedly in critical condition. Now, when this story first broke, what the white media reported was that while they couldn't give a motive, they did say that it was personal in nature. Memphis is 65% black. That means that 2 out of every 3 people in that city is black. So in a city where the demographics are so overwhelmingly black and a guy goes to commit a school shooting, it's guaranteed he has to be black because of the demographics. In fact, that's a statistical guarantee. That's what determines practically all crimes, with the exception of a small handful. So when the story broke, the public waited to see the inevitable security footage or any other visual evidence that would show the black perpetrator's face. Now, while the public was waiting for that, I noticed that during a news piece, the white media talked to some of the Jewish residents of Memphis, and you had one woman who thought it was appropriate to talk about anti-Semitic violence and then immediately pivot to talking about gun crimes in the city in general.
The question on my mind is, was this a hate crime or, just a random, episode of gun violence, which unfortunately is very common in this city.
Now, a man goes to a Jewish school with a gun. He tries to get into the school, and when he finds that the doors are locked, he goes outside, he's confronted by personnel there and fires his gun at them. Now, why does she say she doesn't know if it's anti-Semitic? How is that a random anything? But this is what always happens. Whenever some person is in the news for sexual assault, they always have to shoehorn a black man's name into the article or TV report, because they can't just let some non-black person be the subject of unflattering headlines all by themselves. It's reflexive for them. Memphis is 65% black. The city is overwhelmingly African American, but this is the very first incident like this that's ever happened in the entire city's history. Soon enough, the first images of the perpetrator were finally released to the public, and predictably, it was not a black person who did this.
Family friends are identifying the suspect as Joel Bowman, a member of the Jewish community and former student at the school.
I'm not going to necessarily accuse this woman of using racial dog whistles, but she knows full well that from the California Hebrew School incident to the Tree of Life Synagogue massacre, it's not black people who are carrying out these attacks on Jewish schools and places of worship. And speaking of the Tree of Life massacre, the day after the attack in Memphis, the perpetrator of the Tree of Life mass killing was sentenced to death by the jury. So we are literally getting daily reminders who the people are who commit anti-Semitic violence, and yet you have people even from within the Jewish community who overlook that and begin opining about some random black gunman somewhere. By the way, there was also another woman who commented on this, and she said that she knew the shooter, and she said that she didn't think that he would hurt anyone at all, that he didn't really intend to harm anyone.
Genuinely, to the core, don't think he would ever intentionally hurt someone.
Brittany Eshelman-Warsh also attended the academy. So what do you think his intentions were going to the school with the handgun today?
He has struggled with mental health for a number of years.
Understanding the weight of what could have happened, she's asking people not to pass judgment.
I can't justify him walking into a school with a gun. There's no rhyme or reason for it. However, I don't believe that he was going to hurt anyone.
Yeah, that makes sense. You got some guy who goes to a school for children armed with a pistol. He doesn't go to the front desk or anything. He doesn't have any kids there. He's just there by himself with a gun. And then he tries to call himself barging in there, and when he can't, he's confronted by security there, and he fires a couple of shots at complete strangers because he didn't intend to harm anyone. This is what this woman says. You can't make this stuff up.
However, I don't believe that he was going to hurt anyone.
I personally truly believe that we have avoided a tragedy. I think this suspect was going to harm somebody before the day was over.
This is the automatic reaction from some people to the same circumstance. They hear that someone with a gun tried to get into their child's religious school, and they immediately begin opining about crime in general in the city. And then when they find out the suspect is not only not black, it's also somebody who they're familiar with, they begin pleading innocence on his behalf. And when you point out the excruciating contradiction of saying that someone with a gun wasn't intending to harm anyone, They then retreat to saying, well, he struggled with mental health. Ah, the all-purpose standby excuse that we hear for every mass shooter who's ever lived, so long as they're not black, because if they're black, they knew exactly what they were doing. I'm sure if I asked this other woman about her remarks about crime in general in the city, I'm sure she would immediately feign indignation and claim that she wasn't making a racial statement. Well, that's no defense. Look at the statistics for school shootings, which is what this was. The stats are overwhelmingly of white shooters, not black ones, overwhelmingly. So why would this woman, who by the way is Jewish, why would she hear about a shooter who tried to get into a Jewish school and then she immediately discounts that it's anti-Semitic and then goes on a tangent about random gun violence in the city in general? As if this was just some clown who ran up to the school because he had nothing better to do, other than show up with a gun. How many random acts of gun violence in Memphis have involved shooting at a Jewish school? She's pretzeling herself into knots trying to drag black people into the conversation. Her knee-jerk automatic reaction when faced with the unpleasant truth was to start ranting about something that she hoped could be attributed to the black community in general. Crime nationwide is actually at historic lows. Secondly, the perpetrator in this incident wasn't some Pookie or Ray Ray having a shootout. It came from a former Jewish student of that school. That's who Joel Bowman is. He used to be a student there. Black people did not do this. But she had black people on the brain anyway, even at a time like this, during a crisis. It makes absolutely no sense to be trying to shoehorn black people into the conversation, even under these circumstances. Now, why would this woman say something like that? Perhaps because there's been this persistent, steady drumbeat, an undercurrent of anti-black rhetoric coming from certain prominent figures in the community. We have such conscientious people like Ari Emanuel and others making up stuff and pushing hysteria about black anti-Semitism and other fairy tales that don't exist. You have publications like Rolling Stone putting out lying headlines saying black anti-Semitism isn't rare, it's ingrained, and then talking about how black boys in particular are just mindless lemmings for anti-Semitic whatever. A headline that was so putridly racist that Rolling Stone had to take it down within an hour of having posted it, though not before the black media took some screenshots. This is proof that they know they're lying. They want to throw a rock and hide their hands. Black anti-Semitism is a lie, and they know it, because if they actually thought that black anti-Semitism was real and ingrained and all the rest of it, then why take down the headline at all? If you're just reporting the facts, why not just stand by it? And why take it down so quickly? Stand by the lies you tell. Well, with such unquestionable scholarship, obviously this latest incident in Memphis has to have been committed by a black man because Ari Emanuel and Goldie Taylor couldn't possibly be wrong. Except they are, because they're always wrong. Like in every other case of anti-Semitic violence, it wasn't a black person, and this case is no different. The shooter was a white man. He wasn't just white. It's been confirmed that he's Jewish. His name is Joel Bowman, and he was a former student at that school. Now, to say that the shooter isn't black should be excruciatingly redundant. It shouldn't even need saying. But because some people like the woman shown earlier and people like Ari Emanuel obsess over black people, we find ourselves needing to say it anyway. This automatic knee-jerk reaction that certain people have to trying to disparage us no matter what, that's the real hate that nobody talks about. The racial demagoguery that Ari Emanuel and his anti-black pals carry out may keep people from talking about folks like Ari's pal, the domestic violence thug Dana White, who beat his wife in public. And not only has Ari Emanuel said nothing about it, but Dana White hasn't paid any price for his thuggery. But lies about black anti-Semitism only serve to leave the Jewish community vulnerable to the real threats against them, which are not black people. The ones who are pointing their fingers the most and yelling the loudest at black people are making Jewish people the most vulnerable because Ari Emanuel only cares about what will be politically expedient for himself. And to him, that's keeping black people under constant media attack. This is a man who shakes hands with Donald Trump, who has made all kinds of vile anti-Semitic remarks, but that doesn't bother Ari Emanuel. Well, this is just the latest reminder that racist tropes like black anti-Semitism don't make anyone in the Jewish community any safer, especially not Jewish children. Why doesn't Ari Emanuel care? For the same reason Goldie Taylor didn't have anything to say about this latest act of hate in Memphis. The same reason the Rolling Stones didn't have anything to say about it. You want to fight anti-Semitism? Then you have to stop automatically trying to resort to scapegoats. Stop trying to always make black people the face of the problem. Anti-black rhetoric is the quintessential American lie, and those who tell it use it as a way to avoid discussing their own problems. You never have to deal with those so long as you're pointing at black boogeymen, even when it's obvious they don't exist. This latest incident was given almost no white media attention at all, unsurprisingly. It's been swept under the rug because it doesn't fit the narrative. There's no black person to blame for it, and no one will have a shred of moral courage and confront Ari Emanuel about the lies that he tells. No Rolling Stone articles about how scapegoating black people is the real and ingrained hate. Instead, this too will be allowed to fall down the memory hole, that is, until the law of averages finally kicks in and they find some black person who they can accuse of something. Recently, they chose Jamie Foxx to be the whipping boy of the week. That didn't take long. And that's the real crime here. And that's this week's Friday Crime Report. Keep your eyes open and stay on alert, because there's a lot worse criminals out there than the ones the white corporate media chooses to show you. Good day, and be one. I'd like to take a moment to mention some of our contributors. Donna Cooks, Seven, Clifton Johnson, Odell, and FBAK. Salute to them and thank you to everyone for listening, liking, and sharing this message. Black empowerment only exists because of you.